cover a lot of some different areas, and we'll get to that. So here's a little bit about me. I'm a licensed real estate agent as well, so I have dual capacities. I serve as a real estate agent, a licensed realtor, and an attorney. I've also been a mediator since 2011. I'm an adjunct professor at HCC in their real estate department. I became a licensed attorney in 2019, so I've actually done some of this other stuff a lot longer than I've been practicing law. So here's a little bit about my background. I don't know if you know, a little known fact about me is that I'm probably one of the very few people in this country that have 2 associate degrees. I don't know how that's important, but I like telling people that just to. From a real estate perspective, here's kind of an idea of what an overall real estate person who and an attorney who can handle transactional real estate transactions in their practice. I do residential transactions, commercial transactions, development transactions, investment, and there's something that we also do call owner's representation, right? And this is in the real estate firm that I'm associated with. So just to give you an idea, this is just a small snapshot of a real estate project that I was involved in. This is an area off of South Post Oak and West Orm, which is right here, if you can see my cursor. So I didn't do all of this, so I'm not going to take credit for that whole picture, but right here at this corner, South Post Oak, heading down to, as I travel on the west side, it goes to right at the Fort Bend Toll Road. This development consists of right here. This is a commercial spread. These are commercial spreads right here. Here there was an HISD school. It's a new HISD school. There was a YMCA in this area, an apartment complex for seniors in this area. And over here was a community that was created with, in essence, of 400 homes. So this whole area eventually used to be 234 acres of pasture land at South Post Oak and West Orm, which is inside of Houston, just right outside of 610, if you guys don't know. But it's also the area that Vince Young, the high school, football hero that, went to the University of Texas, won a national championship. He actually went to school in this area at, now I forgot his high school, but it's right down the street from this area. So that's the kind of area that this is in. Madison High School is the area that is the high school that he went to. So I wanted to at least give you guys a few real estate facts as far as real estate is concerned, to kind of give you an idea of how you got into this business or how I ended up in this business. So basically, the state of Texas started to require persons who would sell real estate or brokers who had the capacity to sell real estate for other people had to have a license. And so they did that in 1939. So since 1939 was when real estate brokers had to be licensed in Texas. So then in 1949, 10 years later, the legislature created TREC, which is the Texas Real Estate Commission. And the Texas Real Estate Commission, one of its duties is that they govern the real estate practice in the state of Texas. Right. And so that act was actually changed to the Texas Real Estate License Act in 1955. If you guys are familiar with it, it tells you who has to be licensed to sell real estate and the rules associated with literally anything real estate in Texas. Right. So the commission, they regulate real estate brokers and salespersons. But in addition to that, also real estate inspectors, residential service companies, which are called home warranties, developers, and right-of-way agents, right? And so the Texas Real Estate Commission is made up of 9 members. It's a 9-member commission with 6-year terms. There's also 2 additional committees, advisory committees that they've created, one being the Real Estate Inspector Committee, but the other being the Broker Lawyer Committee. So there are lawyers that are a part of the TREC Broker Lawyer Committee. The makeup is in addition to the brokers, there are 6 brokers, there are 6 lawyers, and then there's a person committed from a consumer, right? In this committee, the governor selects the brokers, right? The governor has the selection of the brokers to be in this committee. However, the president of the State Bar of Texas is the person that selects the lawyers for this committee. So if you ever decide that you want to get on this committee, you know who you have to go talk to. Here's some other real estate facts. So sometimes there are words that we use interchangeably, you know, like I can ask someone, hey, do you want a Coke? And they're like, yeah, and what kind? Dr. Pepper, you know, so Coke is just another word for a soft drink. Realtors has become another word for real estate agents. So, but the fact of the matter is that all realtors are licensed real estate salespersons, but not all licensed salespersons are realtors, right? In order for you to be a realtor, you have to be a member of the National Association of Realtors. And they make it hard for you to be a realtor if you aren't a member. Or they make it hard for you to actually be successful in your profession if you're not a member of the National Association of Realtors. There's just a lot of tools that you just don't have access to. That's kind of changing a little bit, but we'll discuss that a little later. So again, you have the way that the umbrella works is that you have NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors. In Texas, then you have TAR, which is a state organization, the Texas Association of Realtors. And then other municipalities and areas within Texas have their own boards, such as Houston, which is the Houston Association of Realtors, right? So another fact is that African-American real estate professionals were restricted from joining the National Association of Realtors and carrying that title called realtors until 1961. So that's just, a fact. African-American professionals created another organization called the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which I'm actually a member of. And it's we use the term realtist. So if you couldn't use the term realtor, but we've used the term realtist, and that organization is still alive and kicking, and it has different organizations throughout the country. I'm sorry. So the current makeup of realtors by gender is that females make up 53% of all licensed realtors in the country, and males make up 42%, which in all actuality, if you go back through the history of real estate in Texas or even real estate across the country, is that a lot of, in the early 1900s, a lot of housewives who were housewives sold real estate. Like that was what they did. It's been females have had a very powerful role and a presence in the industry for a long period of time because it was dominated by women for the longest, and it still is. Women still make up the largest group of realtors. The NAR, National Association of Realtors, is also the largest trade organization in the United States, comprised of 1.5 million members. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of political power within that organization. The Houston Association of Realtors is a 40,000 member organization of real estate professionals, and is the second largest association within the National Association of Realtors. I think the largest group is the California Association of Realtors, and then it's the Houston Association of Realtors. So now kind of what we're here for, we'll get into it a little bit. What are benefits for lawyers? I belong to a lot of Facebook groups for lawyers, and I see this all the time about lawyers who want to get a commission for a real estate transaction, or even for their own personal transaction. One of the benefits of being an attorney, a licensed attorney in Texas, is that you are exempt from having to have a real estate licensure for participating in a real estate transaction. So you have the ability, or we have the ability, to represent other people without having the a actual real estate license. So that means when you're getting ready to buy a home, or if someone in your family is getting ready to buy a home, you can help with that transaction. You can facilitate that transaction. You have the same power as a broker in that particular case, right? Here's the thing that you don't have. Without a license, the Texas law prohibits a license holder, meaning a licensed broker, from splitting a commission fee or broker's fee with any person who is not a license holder, right? So what that means is that you are exempt from having to have a license to do a real estate transaction. However, they cannot pay you a commission because you do not have a license. There are workarounds to that. I will share a few workarounds with that for you. If you are buying a home, or you're representing a family member or a friend in this particular transaction, that principal can always pay you a fee, but that fee has to come from the principal, right? It can't be called a commission. The principal can pay you a fee. The second thing is that if it's your personal home, maybe take that fee, typically it's 3%, and try to flip it into, paying closing costs or something like that. There may be restrictions on how much of a contribution that you can get, but I think that you would be able to work it out and contribute and have that contribution spread out to your particular benefit. The other thing is that maybe you can work with someone, and that someone may be able to, if you're the principal in that person can give you a portion of that commission back, and that's all legal in the state of Texas. So that's kind of how that works from a benefit, or at least one of the very benefits is that you don't have to have a license in order to participate in any real estate transaction. But if you're planning on participating in that transaction for a fee, then you got to be able to go work it out. We got to be able to work it out a little bit. Another benefit that you will have if you want to practice in real estate without being a licensed sales agent is that the Texas Real Estate Commission, they give you all the forms. The purpose of the broker lawyer committee is that committee promulgates all of the contracts that are required for use. So any contract that's required for use in a real estate transaction in the state of Texas, you can find under the at the TREC Real Estate Commission. Let me see if this link works. I will go there for a second, just so you can see it and where you can actually find it. You go to TREC, the site, and you would look under contracts. You would look under the contract forms. There's an icon there, and under their contracts, there it is. There's amendments to contracts, farm and ranch contracts. If you live in a rural area, a new home contract for both incomplete and completed construction, and then resale contracts. So you have all the forms that you would need to actually do a real estate transaction through TREC. You don't have to, use the Lexis forms or any forms that you draft on your own. Sometimes I get calls from attorneys and they're looking for certain things, and I just send them one of these forms, and I'm like, hey, here's the advantage of using a form. Most of the stuff is thought out, is kind of balanced. If you're a buyer, the forms are kind of they lean towards buyers for the most part. So there's a lot of protections for buyers with these forms, and the reason is because if you sign a listing agreement to sell your home, that's a pretty definite statement. They feel like you want to sell your home. So there's not many ways for you as a seller to get out, although there is. And the other thing for lawyers is that in the contract, especially and I'm speaking of the 1 to 4 residential resale contract, there's also language in there about what happens if there's a disagreement. That all the parties agree to go to mediation, but if you can't go to mediation and you go to litigation, there's the line in there about attorney's fees. The person who loses the who loses the deal is already agreeing to pay attorney fees, and in certain breach of contracts, I know that language in that contract is important in order for you to get attorney's fees for those types of deals. So that's kind of one deal. Let me see if I will be able to get back to my, let me see. Where's my share? Back to my share. Okay. Did I go back?
It's actually still just showing the PowerPoint.
Oh, it's showing the PowerPoint. It's not. It didn't show the website.
No, probably because it wasn't on the same screen.
Oh, okay. My bad. Let me try to. Let me see. Let me see that. Is it there now?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to show so you will be familiar with it, to see what the TREC page looks like and where the contracts are. Again, you would go in the deal, and it actually has it under, you have contract forms, you have contract addendas, and you actually have some other forms that you may need if you were, if you're doing a transaction. So you can literally do a transaction with all the legislatively required forms that's available. So, okay. Okay, let me go back to my share. Sorry, I'm having a. Okay. So, this is always, okay, there we go. Oh, give me back. Okay, so, now, so here's a question or whatever that I present. I hear a lot of times, especially in the legal field, you can be a jack of all trades and a master of none. A lot of people like to, kind of stay in their own lane. Why get out and expand or do those particular types of things? So the way that I operate as a dual license is that I understand the connections and the intersects, right? Like there are certain things that if from a legal practice that I do that intersects with real estate and real property transactions, right? So if I understand business transactions, then I'm probably going to be good enough to understand a real estate transaction. I mean, it's just, there are certain things that are kind of that kind of just move around with the practice. If I do contract law, if I do business contracts and I understand drafting business contracts, I understand the language of contracts, then I probably would understand the contracts, the real estate contracts. I mean, all of those are written by lawyers, and it's pretty self-explanatory if you have the experience with that. Now, the one thing that a lot of lawyers that I've run across when they're looking at like the TREC forms, they don't like the TREC forms. There are certain words and certain drafting techniques that they use personally that they want to insert into those contracts. And I mean, you can do that if you're representing, especially if you're representing a buyer, but you also have to remember that you're dealing with a non-attorney on the other side, and that non-attorney is used to dealing with TREC forms and TREC contracts. And so you may add a level of complication to that when there are contracts that are already available that will get the job done for you. Probate. If you deal with probate, then you know that in a lot of cases, even small probate claims, small probate administrations, there's real property that something needs to happen to it, whether it needs to be sold, whether it needs to be, and by understanding probate and understanding how real property comes into that, you're probably more than equipped to handle that particular transaction for your particular client if you wanted to. Estate planning is the same way. You get a lot of people that have real estate that I get a lot of people that want to put real estate in trust. They want to put real properties in trust. If you understand those particular things and the tax implications and the overall needs of your clients from a real estate perspective, real property is a part of that, that I think that you are more than capable of being able to kind of handle. So it's just kind of extensions, it may stretch your comfort level a little bit. But at the same time, I think it can, help you grow your business because, from my understanding, I wasn't in a lawyer at the time. Tort reform and all those things kind of came through. And so, or medical malpractice reforms and those things. And my understanding is that if, you solely had your eggs in that basket, you have certain legislative deals that can make a really big impact on your business that will, you have to make some decisions. It's the same way in the real estate industry. I mean, you have certain real estate companies that they only do listings. They only represent sellers. You have others that only represent buyers. Well, in the market right now, for instance, if you're representing sellers and you're in a hot seller market, and what that means is that there are more buyers than more inventory, you may want to switch to buyers because those are the people that are looking for the transactions, that for the inventory that's there. If you don't have any inventory, you can't just create new inventory, and you might not be able to, sustain when there's a shift in the industry and it goes away from your, bread and butter. So my legal perspective, from a dual license, from having a dual license, and I think what really makes me different, because I deal with real estate attorneys on a pretty frequent basis, and those real estate attorneys, or a lot of them, the largest amount of them, aren't dual licensed. They don't have to be to really understand their particular deal. I think it helps. From my perspective, I think it helps me because I understand the transaction. So when you lay a contract down in front of me, I can kind of understand the transaction. I understand the things that maybe a party hasn't said or is not saying, just by looking at the deal, just by looking at how the deal is structured. I understand the contract form. So when someone comes in and they ask, and we're talking about something, I know exactly where to go to in that contract to see if it's applicable or not, just to see what the contract says, and understanding that if I take this to court, here's probably what a judge is going to look at, or here's the arguments that the other side is going to make in this particular case, and how are we able to handle that. I also understand the purpose. I mean, I understand that at the end of the day, typically in a real estate transaction, somebody wanted to sell a home, somebody wanted to buy a home. Where did it go wrong? Where's the fault? What's the injury? And is it still a chance for them to even have the transaction at the end of the day? And that's where know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Real estate is a very emotional deal, because you're dealing with someone who is selling a property and you're dealing with someone who owns a property. Most of your transactions are going to be from people or with people that are having an emotional attachment to the property. They really want this house. And so, I've had real estate transactions that I've had real estate litigation that started out, it's a $63,000 kind of earnest money deal or whatever, and both parties think that they should have it, and it ends up at the end of the day where both parties have in excess of $50,000 worth of legal fees. It's that particular understanding kind of says, hey, maybe there's a midpoint in somewhere where we can kind of cut it off, where you're not losing, where you're not spending this money in legal fees and you're not spending this money in legal fees. Let's just try to get this thing done. Another thing are expert witnesses. So when I'm in litigation or we're in litigation and I get a list of like their expert witnesses, we already know from the transactional side of it what that expert witness is supposed to testify to and what questions. We actually believe that we can turn a lot of expert witnesses into our expert witnesses just because these are the answers. This is the process. This is our understanding. This is what they're supposed to do, whether it's from a professional standpoint. And if we ask those questions, that's kind of where it's going to lay. But we also know the expert witnesses to kind of choose. I don't know if you guys are familiar with. There aren't a lot of dual agent. There's not a lot of dual licensed real estate professionals in the city, and so I happen to know a few. For instance, I know many of you probably know Chuck Jacobus, who's just a renowned lawyer from real estate just all over the country. That's here in Texas. I think Chuck is a professor over at the University of Houston Law School as well, but Chuck writes the core courses for real estate all over the country, like real estate contracts, real estate law. Chuck Jacobus is a leading authority on that, not just in Texas, but all over the country. You also have Jim Wiedemer, who's another attorney, licensed realtor in Texas, that he writes books based upon real estate law. I mean, he writes textbooks for, the Houston Community College systems and other systems across the country as well. So being able to call upon those professionals and know that to use them as expert witnesses, and even you can become an expert witness in any of these cases, is another benefit to you as a part of your overall business. So now, representation. Why do real estate brokers make good clients for you? What's the benefit? The benefit is that a lot of real estate brokers are what I call super agents, right? Their overall purpose should be to manage the transaction. That's not the purpose. What super agents do is that they get in and they decide that they're going to run the entire transaction. They're going to make decisions or whatever that they shouldn't make. They're going to do a lot of things that increase their overall liabilities to their brokers. And some of them don't even know that they're increasing their liabilities. Just by making their recommendations, all of these things, they put themselves on that road to litigation. I mean, I see it every day. I'm still involved in a lot of real estate organizations and a lot of real estate groups, and they increase their liabilities unknowingly every day. A lot of agents are overly aggressive. I mean, that's why real estate agents are often compared to used car salesmen. I mean, the public just doesn't have a lot of trust, in real estate agents. And what's really indicative about that is right now, the whole real estate industry has been under attack. I mean, it's being under attack from a commission base. There's litigation that's going on between the national associations and realtor and the National Association of Realtors and the Department of Justice right now, basically about how the National Association of Realtors controls information, like the MLS. So when you get a house, you put a house into the MLS, which is the multiple listing service. You have to be a member of NAR to be able to get that information. The way they're also under attack about commissions. Typically in a real estate transaction, when a selling agent does a listing agreement with a broker, that listing agreement is usually worth 6%. There's a 6% commission, and that broker agrees that they'll co-op with a buyer's agent, and they'll split it 3% on each side. Well, you have sellers right now that are saying, why should I pay the broker's agent? Why am I paying the broker's agent? Because that buyer's agent doesn't represent me. And so there's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of shifts that are going on in the real estate world right now. Zillow, for instance, I think Zillow is moving into Zillow actually has a brokerage now. So Zillow, in essence, is a licensed broker, but they also have their own Zillow site where they list properties. They do all sorts of stuff. I think they're going to be competing within the MLS and trying to create other areas for people to get into. So there's just another example of the NAR and the DOJ. NAR the realtors are responsible for about $85 billion in residential real estate commissions, like in 2019. So it's going to be interesting to see how that changes. It's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic kind of moves around. So the opportunities, from a lawyer's perspective, again, is that from a transactional standpoint, you can be involved in a real estate transaction for you, your family, for someone else other than yourself, and not need a license. You can get into the residential side, the commercial side, the development sides, and enhance your particular business. I think the other thing for lawyers, there are court appointments. I mean, there's mediations and receiverships that occur. I don't know how often receiverships still happen from a real estate side, but in mediation and probate, there's real property that needs to be disposed. I mean, in your knowledge of real estate, or your knowledge of contracts, or your knowledge of transactions could very well lead to some of these court appointments, if you're known as someone that can handle, and that you're versed in real estate, or that you take advantage of your ability to do that. Another thing where there are a lot of legal representation, or there are title companies. I probably know about 4 lawyers right now that own their own title companies. I mean, it's a very big deal. The title companies are they're the group that does the title studies. They do the examinations in real estate transactions. There are a couple of attorneys I know that actually own title companies, but there are other attorneys that I know that are fee attorneys. And those fee attorneys, what they do is that those are the guys that draft the deeds to a property. They don't represent either party. They draft the deeds to a transaction. If they need heirship affidavits, they draft those. Whatever's done, they might review the title schedule A, B, and C of the deal. But that's what they do. And many of them are doing a lot of transactions. I mean, your larger title companies right now are probably doing somewhere like hundreds of transactions a week. They're doing hundreds of transactions a week, and those lawyers are drafting those deeds for the most part. And for the most part, I mean, you have to know exactly what you're doing, but once you kind of draft a deed and have a template, you'll know what you need to do. You'll know how you need to put that together. Again, expert witnesses. When there's real estate transactions, real estate litigation that goes on, I mean, attorneys, there's another attorney that's in Beaumont that he is also a licensed broker. I can't think of his name right now, but he's called on as an expert witness all the time in real estate cases, in real estate cases and real estate transactions to get those things through. Again, probate, you make that connection from a probate standpoint to help those people and dispose of that property, then you're great. And estate plans as well. So I'm kind of interactive a lot in these cases. I mean, I don't see any questions or whatever in the chat. I think that if you guys are interested in learning more, or from a real estate perspective, talking about it a little more from a real estate perspective, I'm open. I enjoy talking to other attorneys about this sort of thing. If there are questions that you have about a real estate transaction, I mean, feel free. If I'm not on the other side of the table from you, then I can talk to you. That's my information. I guess right now, Ruben, are there any questions? I mean, does anyone have any questions?
Right now, I don't see any questions, but I do have my own question. You were talking about, looks like Attorney Oscar Favela, insurance not paying claims.
We have a case where the client just called me this morning saying that he's been waiting for 6 months for the insurance to pay the damages to the house, and they offer $4,000, and the damages are about $50,000, and they don't want to pay. I mean, they're not answering. They're not even acknowledging his calls or his attorney's calls. What can he do?
I think to me, so from a real estate perspective, whenever we've dealt with insurance claims or insurance damage or whatever, that's typically something that from your contractor, if your contractor goes in and you have a reputable contractor, that contractor should know how to deal with the insurance companies and be able to contest whatever the insurance company is saying and showing that there's damage. I mean, most insurance companies use something that they use across the country to kind of figure out their claims, and typically the insurance claims when it comes to, things like profit overhead, cost of materials are usually a little higher than some of the local stuff. But I think that for us, I would take a look and see how the contractor is communicating with the insurance company as far as those claims go.
Thank you.
Mark, can you send me your slideshow? And I can upload it to the, or send it to whoever needs it.
Okay. I see another question. I think Diamond
You testify as an expert.
I have not testified as an expert as of yet. I know that I'm on the list for some people, but no, I have not testified as an expert.
Attorney Diamond Hayes says, I want to get my real estate license, but there are so many programs to choose from. Do you recommend one?
So I would tell you that the depends on how fast you want to go. Like if you want to get your real estate license, then you can go to like Champion School of Real Estate. Depending upon the speed, they have so you have to get, well, you know what? In all actuality, you may not have to take as many classes. They may want you to take the core classes, but check out Champion School of Real Estate. Give them your transcript so they can tell you what courses that you've already taken that you're exempted from having to take. And you could probably get your real estate license. Each course is like 30 hours, so it's like 10 days, but they have it where you can do it online now. And so I would probably Champion School of Real Estate may be the best one. But if you want to get a real estate license, you also you're going to have to get a broker. You're going to have to take the real estate exam to get the license. And if you're just saying that you want to get you want to be able to do it, I mean, you can feel free to give me a call offline and maybe we could talk about it a little more. But just overall to answer your questions, I would check with Champion School of Real Estate.
Can you go back one on your slide?
Let's see. Can I go back? Which one? I think this is the one. That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you were talking about the fee attorneys and creating the documents.
Yes.
So what you were talking about, creating deeds?
Yeah, most of them will create. So an attorney will have to draft a deed in any of the real estate transaction, right? So an attorney turns that deed over. The attorney will also draft up the affidavits of heirship in case you're doing that. So one of the things from a title company perspective, like let's say there's a decedent that own property, and now the heirs want to sell that property, but the heirs did not probate that estate, right? Most title companies will handle that transaction just by using an affidavit of heirship or an heirship affidavit. The attorneys will draft it up. The attorneys send out a questionnaire. The heirs fill out the questionnaire. The attorneys then draft up the affidavit. They send it back out. The heirs go get it notarized and signed, and they get the witnesses, and they just deliver it back to the title company. So, and then whenever there are fee attorneys, as far as deeds go, typically you're going to get a general warranty deed or a special warranty deed, typically in a real estate transaction. So when you do that, if they could also do what's called quitclaim deeds if there was like a divorce, and so the other spouse, they never divested the property. They, the husband or the wife was supposed to get the property, but the other person, but never got it refinanced or whatever. And so they still think that the other spouse still has an interest in the property. So they may draft up a quitclaim deed for that spouse to give that interest up, or whatever agreement or whatever that they would come to with that. Another area that's not on here that you just kind of made me think of, Ruben, is that, in deeds of trust, the deed of trust, the mortgage instrument, you have to have a trustee. And so from a trustee standpoint, many lawyers can become trustees in that real estate transaction. And so the trustee, they're only responsible for two things. They're either responsible for instituting foreclosure proceedings or signing a release of lien. Once that mortgage has been satisfied, that's what they do. And so you have attorneys that are trustees under the deeds of trust as well, is another deal. And I don't really think you have to know anything about real estate to be a trustee in that effect.
What are the main things that show up in the JP courts dealing with real estate? I know eviction is one, correct?
Evictions. I think from an eviction standpoint, that's the only thing that writs of possession. Those are the only things that the JP court will handle. The JP courts do not handle foreclosures.
That's in what county or district?
It's county. The district. Well, no, the foreclosure proceedings happening in district court. So let me back up. Typically in a mortgage deal, when you sign your mortgage, you've already signed, because you have a trustee, then you have what's called you do what's called a non-judicial foreclosure. They have already agreed to that if I don't pay this mortgage, you can foreclose on my property. You got to follow these rules. You got to send acceleration letters and those sort of things, but we don't have to go through court in a non-judicial foreclosure, which is probably 95% of the mortgages that are there are done with non-judicial foreclosures. So you just gotta send the notices, and you gotta send a notice to the court that you're gonna have this. You get the auction date, because it goes through an auction. You get the auction date and you post it, and you go on with the foreclosure.
A general question or scenario question. There is a husband and wife divorce and gave property to wife, no deed filed. Would husband still have interest?
Repeat that.
People getting divorced. Wife supposedly got the property, but no deed was filed. Does that mean the husband still has interest?
Maybe. I mean, if the deed was recorded, so they purchased a house, it would just depend. You got to go back and look at that. Were they doing a contract for deed? I mean, if they were doing a contract for deed, that's a whole nother ball game. But typically,
the judgment said that the wife is to get the house, but there was no deed filed.
So yeah, that makes so from a title company perspective, because that's kind of what we're talking about. If they want to sell the house, the title company is going to look for the person who was not awarded the home in that divorce. They're going to ask them to come sign off on something that says that they have no interest in it.
So Mark, that's my question. It's my question. The wife is being foreclosed on, and we're trying to claim they didn't foreclose, didn't send anything to the husband, and he still has an equitable interest. And we're trying to keep him in it. This question.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. I think
nothing was ever filed nothing was filed in real estate, to transfer the property from him to her, so from the
Yeah,
husband to the wife. They're both on the original deed.
yes. So I think if they're both on the original deed, and so that, I mean, that's a complicated deal, because I think that the trustee is only required to give notice to where he knows people are. And so, from the judgment standpoint of the divorce, they may not have been aware of that. And like you said, the transaction transferring the property, never happened. So you might have a way to kind of stop that foreclosure to make sure that he was supposed to get notice. And if he didn't, that's a good, I don't know if it's a good scenario, but I think that's
Well, I think it's equitable, but I don't know if there are any equitable remedies in real estate. So that's all.
yeah. Well, I think if he still has an interest, which he does, I mean, because
Yeah, he still
yeah.
owes the money. Yeah, he still owes the money.
Yes. And if he was supposed to get notice and he didn't get notice, then I think that you have an argument there to at least stop the foreclosure, and then maybe move to a point where, maybe there's something that he can do to retain the property or sell the property and get his equity out of it.
All right,
Okay,
other
thanks.
question is, besides yourself, what are the names of the leading people you mentioned? They said Chuck was one. That was Diamond Hayes asked that.
Yeah, so there's Chuck Jacobus, there's Jim Wiedemer, which is Weidermer. Those are, I mean, I know other real estate attorneys, but I think that if you're talking about like known across the country for some of the work that they do, those would be the first two that come to my mind in this area.
All right, another question is, how can we help people who are in court for not paying independent school district taxes? Goal is for property owner not to go to foreclosure.
I think
That's
what
Oscar.
I think what you have to do with that is try to set up something with Linebarger to a payment plan for them to get caught back up on their taxes. Sometimes you'd be surprised, they will accept, if you get with them, in many cases, they will accept a payment plan. They will create a payment plan, and that could very well stop your foreclosure deal with them if you do it ahead of time. If you do it in enough time, they may work with you.
Is that going to be through talking with a lawyer or talking with a?
Yeah, once it goes to foreclosure, the city, the attorneys are Linebarger and Associates. They represent the cities and the other taxing authorities in their foreclosures. They're the guys that handle that. But they will set up, payment plans for you to help you. And they're starting now to actually go back and starting to institute tax foreclosures and tax sales now. I think that memorandum or it is over. The moratorium is over with that. I think they were supposed to start like this month or last month.
All right. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, I think we're good on questions. I feel like I have other questions, but I'm just like, you know what? That's like us gonna be talking on the phone. Different things. Too many things come in my brain for that. All right. So what I'm gonna do right now is